There's a chant that I learned for when we did the yajna, the fire ceremony. And it's always one it's one I've always loved. Om Triyambakam Yajamahe Sagandim Upushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityurmukshiyamamritat Swaha. And then you cast into the fire your attachments, your karmas, the seeds of future action. Well, we should do that in ourselves. And in this, in bowing to the God in you, I ask that God to remind your ego to get rid of itself, to get rid of this limitation, to understand that you are in yourself, and what other people think and do really doesn't matter. Be free, cast everything away, and you will see that far from being painful, it is liberating. The more free you are in yourself, the more joyful you will be. And so, I would like to read a couple of very interesting thoughts here, because my guru was a renunciate, but he was a renunciate of ego above everything else, and he didn't feel attached to himself. And he said that all people can be like this. They don't have to become brahmacharis and sannyasis. Be free inwardly. He told us this story in his reminiscing on the past. I remember going to the Ganges for a bath one day. He told us, my practice was to stand in the water up to my neck, singing to God. I would visualize the water's flow as God's flowing grace. He was about 16 at this time. That day, as I was returning from the river, I met an aunt of mine. On seeing me, she cried out, "Disgraceful child, look at you!" I looked down and saw that my body was completely naked. I'd left my clothing on the riverbank. I looked at her calmly and said, "The sin is in you." Impertinent brat! Angrily, she slapped my face. Nothing could upset me that day, however. Quietly, I turned away and, singing to Divine Mother, retraced my steps to the riverbank, where I retrieved my clothes. There's another one I'd like to read you. Laurie Pratt, who, as I've said earlier, and as readers of my book, A Place Called Ananda, will recall, was to become in later years my severest test, was for some time one of my dearest friends. She once told me the following story. You know, in the early days, in the 1920s, Master didn't talk about creating a monastery. One day I entered his study to find him smiling broadly. "Would you like to be married?" he said. I hadn't thought about this possibility and wasn't particularly interested in it. As things turned out, however, I did get married later on. Maybe he was seeing marriage in my karma. At any rate, he certainly didn't indicate to me that he was opposed to my marrying. Laurie returned several years after her marriage to Mount Washington. To me, Walter, the Master said regarding her, she was never touched inwardly by that experience. Most of his highly disciples either were or had been married, including St. Lin, Yogacharya Oliver Black, Dr. Lewis. He once said if one marries out of necessity, he will have to reincarnate to reach the point where he wants to live only for God. The key to that last sentence lies, of course, in those three words, out of necessity. What did the Master mean by them? As I understood them, he meant that if a person marries to fulfill an actual emotional need and a desire for an earthly companion, he must return to find fulfillment in God alone. Out of necessity doesn't apply, in other words, to social or family pressure, or to some outward convenience, or for some outward reason that one might have, but to desire. And it's very interesting that he really equated renunciation not with the outward act so much as with an inner attitude. He had that attitude just naturally all his life. In that way, he could be completely naked. It meant nothing to him because he didn't see himself as a man. He saw himself as a human being with a human body. That was it. Well, we need to have more of that consciousness too. Don't think of yourself as a man or a woman. Don't think of the opposite sex as the opposite sex. The Jagat Guru Shankaracharya of Govardhan Math in Puri, I remember him saying that instead of opposite sex, why not simply say the other sex? Because opposite implies a difference far deeper than actually exists. The sexual difference is there, sure. There are differences of temperament. Women, as I've said, go more by feeling, men go more by reason. There's a need to balance the two, but really it's a good thing always to feel that you are complete in yourself. Like the poem of Rabindranath Tagore, Ak La Cholo. I've written a song which we're going to sing in a few minutes, or our singers are going to sing. Go on alone. Walk like a man even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all stay home, their goal still awaits you. Go on alone. Follow your dream, though it lead to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow, once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, this world is not, this dream is not, your dream is not our own. Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone. Don't worry what other people think. How many people I've driven absolutely crazy with that I've just decided in my life that I'm very accommodating, very friendly, but I just go my way. And they think that because I'm friendly and accommodating, I should go their way. Well, I don't. Well, you know, when I was a child, there were a couple of times when bullies tried to beat me up, and they were much bigger than I, and they succeeded. I remember when I was in school in England, there was this big bully. He was an upperclassman that even the upperclassmen were afraid. And he was a German Jew, and I suppose because of that he had some complex about persecution and that he wanted to take out on other people. At any rate, whatever the reason, he was a bully. And I never gave in to bullies. And so one time he found me alone. I was just coming out of the art studio, and he pushed me. Well, I didn't want to be pushed by him. I didn't want to run away, so I simply pushed him back. Well, that's all he needed. My aggression was enough to make it self-defense on his part. He threw me to the floor and started beating me up and demanded, "Do you give up?" Well, no, I didn't give up. And I was lying there bleeding when some upperclassmen came in and saw this. Because they were afraid of him, they said, "Oh, good, clean fight, perfectly fair," and left the room fearfully. So I wasn't going to give in. He kept demanding, "Do you give in?" No, I didn't give in. And finally, he just gave up. Well, you know, it was interesting. He had beaten me then. There was nothing I could do about it. Of course he beat me. But because he didn't beat my spirit, he never touched me again, never bullied me again. He just left me alone. Same thing happened one time when I was in school at Hackley outside Tarrytown in New York. I was 106, I weighed 106. I was a little fellow then, 13 years old. This boy was 15, but big and fat. He weighed 230 pounds altogether. Too fat, especially for a 15-year-old, but a lot bigger than I. And one day, because I never would kowtow to him, he beat me up. And he was just panting with his rage. He said, "Oh, I wish I could throw you out the window. I'm going to throw you out the window." And he became more and more angry, and there was nothing I could do. I lay on my front with my head covered and just waited for him to pummel me until he got tired of it. Throwing me out the window would not have been fun. It was 3 stories above the ground, but whatever happened, there was nothing I could do, so I wasn't afraid. And Finally, he gave up. He never bullied me again. A fellow classmate said, "Why didn't you call for help?" I said, "Because I wasn't afraid." If you stand up to people, if you're just strong in yourself, it drives them crazy, let's face it, but nonetheless, they'll leave you alone. I've had that happen to me too often, but I still will just be myself. I'm a stubborn fellow. Ekala cholo, go on alone. And so the song goes on, because it's not in anger. It says, give life your heart. Bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving. People are afraid to love. They're afraid of how they'll be treated in return. So I said, fear not the loving. All this world's your own. Make rich the soil. But once the seed is sown, seek freedom. Don't linger. Go on alone. Once you've felt that you've made the soil rich, you've planted your seeds, then don't say, oh, my field, my this, my that. Then you get trapped again. Start things, make them as good as you can, go on. Always remember that your reality is you. It's in yourself. This is why the sannyasis in India go with Ananda, to remind them of the spine. This is where you must learn to live. This is why it's good to sit and stand straight. When I see somebody sitting like this, I feel, but I know it would be presumptuous, so I don't. But I feel like going to him and say, look, sit straight. I do that to the people in our community if I see them sitting like that, because you should have a straight spine. It's in that straightness that the energy can rise to the brain. It's in that straight spine that you can feel the energy of Kriya Yoga. In that straight spine, you have courage. In that straight spine, you can learn to be truly centered in yourself. Whereas a bent spine means your mind is outside yourself. You're subject to the world. Succubo, as they say in Italian, submissive to everything. Learn to be a lord of your own self. That is your domain. What happens out there doesn't so much matter. As long as you have your inner strength, go with that. And so go on alone, go on alone, go on alone. Be strong in your ideals also. When you say that you'll do something, do it. One time years ago, I wanted to borrow a turban from an Indian because I had written a play. I used to want to be a playwright, so I've enjoyed writing a few plays. And this was set in India, so one of the characters had to have a turban. And so we went to this Indian's apartment, and a friend of his was there. And as we were leaving, he said, well, I will definitely be there. I knew he wouldn't be there. He hadn't asked where it was, when it was. He hadn't asked anything. I knew he wouldn't be there, and he was not there. Why say it? To please me? I knew it was flattery. It didn't please me at all. When you say you're going to do something, then do it. I have found it a worthwhile practice for myself. If I decide I'm going to go down to the corner and get, let us say, a newspaper or whatever it might be, and then I find, well, I don't need to. I still go because I made myself that promise. Whatever you promise to yourself, keep it. But when you promise to other people, keep it even more determinedly. Because when you give your word, this is what it used to be said in the 19th century, that the judges from England did discover that Indians would rather sacrifice their home than tell a lie in court. Well, that's not the way things are today, and it should be. Let's bring India back to that kind of moral courage that says, when I say I will do it, then I will do it. Be strong in your commitments. Be strong in your truth. Don't say things idly. And you will see this happen to you, that when you say something, it will have to come true even if it isn't true. You have committed yourself, you've committed the universe. Such a soul, when he says, be well, can make people well. Your word is binding, as my guru put it in Autobiography of a Yogi, binding on the universe. Have that kind of power. When you give your promise for anything, keep that promise. And when you say that I think this is beautiful, you must mean it, or don't say it. Be straight. Don't say anything that you don't mean, because that will sap your power. People may think you mean it, but your own power will be lost. When you stand by that truth, you have an ocean of truth behind you, which makes that reality real. The beginning of that is to be aware that you don't need the world around you, because you are your own reality. Therefore, this song, Go On Alone, is an important song. The more you can say, I have my integrity, I have my ideals, whatever other people want of me, this is my truth. I live by it. You will see that when you do that, you are a true Maharaja, because you are king of your own self. Joy to you.
Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone.
Follow your dream, though it lead to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow, once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone.
Give life your heart, bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving, all this world's your own. Make rich the soil, but once the seed is sown, seek freedom.